The date is September 24, 1997. I am in Albany, New York, at the Quality Hotel. These notes are based on my conversations at dinner this evening with members of the 105th Infantry. The people I talk with are Joseph Mariano, that's M-A-R-I. Frank Pusatere, P-U-S-A-T-E-R-E. Period. Messrs. Mariano and Pusatere served with Company D as in David, 105th Infantry, 1st Battalion during the Battle of Saipan. Period. Both of them served in the 105th when it went to Fort McClellan, Alabama in October 1940. Mr. Deeb, D-E-E-B, served with the 102nd Medical Detachment, which was affiliated with the 105th, not only at Fort McClellan, but through the California and the Hawaiian ventures prior to the invasion of Saipan, period. Paragraph. Al Deeb was at Macon Island invasion with the Company M as in Mary, 3rd Battalion, 105th, under the command of Captain William Fern, F-E-R-N. He recalls that the unit was very successful in supporting the 165th Infantry in that engagement, and that it did not take any significant casualties in that fight. He was close in proximity to when Colonel Gardner Conroy of the 165th Infantry was killed in action on Macon, period. Paragraph. Frank Pusatere was the bugler for the Company D, 105th Infantry. He served with the unit, as I have mentioned, from Fort McClellan on through Saipan, where he was wounded on July 7, 1944. Period. He was also a member of the Tibbets Cadets before and after World War II. He still is a member of Tibbets Cadets, which meets at the Purple Heart Lodge in North Troy, 120th Street in Lansingburg, I believe, period. In any event, Mr. Pusatere was wounded at about 6 a.m. on July 7, 1944, near Tanapeg Harbor. He was in the foxhole near the 2nd Battalion, 105th. The Japanese had sprayed machine gun fire in the area, and he jumped into a trench. As he left, he was hit by a mortar round in the face, which left him disfigured in his jaw and in his teeth. He lost teeth and also had a hole in his face. Period. He said that Mike Sabo, S-A-B-O, of the 105th, picked him up and took him back to the beach where he was evacuated from combat. Paragraph. Al Deeb, who, as I mentioned, served with the 102nd Medical Detachment, survived the Banzai attack, but was wounded in mid-July 1944 during the cleanup operation. He was hit by machine gun fire in the groin area, and he was then evacuated to the medical facilities. Paragraph. Joe Mariano went through all of the combat operations, including Saipan in Okinawa, and was never wounded. He served as a machine gunner in Company D, as I mentioned, and he agreed to keep in touch with me in the future about additional information regarding his combat experience. He did tell me that while he was at Okinawa, he adopted or tried to adopt a 6-year-old Korean child who had somehow penetrated the 105th perimeter one evening, period. He tripped a wire. Joe provided him with a uniform with the insignia of Junior D as in David Company, and wanted to take him home with him back to Troy, but he was told by officials that he would have to wait 3 months. Therefore, he turned the child over to another member of Company D, 105th, from Ohio, but he never knew whatever happened to the young child. Period. Paragraph. Al Deeb also, in connection with the Macon operation, stated that after that operation was completed, the 165th Infantry and the 105th Infantry members received an urgent call from the Marine General, Howling Mad Smith, that they were needed at Tarawa, T-A-R-A-W-A, to support the Marines' attack on Macon, the Marine attack on Tarawa, which at that time had gone very badly for the Marine Corps. Al Deeb also said that during the Saipan campaign that he was attached to Company I, 3rd Battalion, 105th Infantry, commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Ted Bratt, P-R-A-D-T, who he said was a wonderful officer. Paragraph. Al Deeb also mentioned, and Frank Pusatere also mentioned, that on the morning of July 7, the members of the 105th Infantry had been led to believe that they would be relieved by the Marine Corps that morning. However, the Marines never showed up, and the 105th took the brunt of the Japanese attack, which was overwhelming at the time. Paragraph. I spoke to all three of these gentlemen about life at Fort McClellan, Alabama, in 1940 and 1941. We discussed the, quote, Ohio, quote, reference, which literally translated meant over the hill in October, period. This apparently was an attitude on the part of some of the soldiers in the 105th Infantry and perhaps others in the 27th Division, that since they had served their full year that they were entitled to go home. However, when they learned they were going to be extended, they began to rebel somewhat, period. According to Joe Mariano and others, period, this frustration was dealt with when the Army agreed to provide furloughs to the men of the 27th Division, period. Some of the men received 10-day furloughs, others received 30-day furloughs. According to these men, Roosevelt knew that the war was coming and that they could not afford to lose trained troops like those of the 27th Division. In that connection, he mentioned something that I never did know. That is that my cousin Bill, who we called Baby Bill, came to Fort McClellan with his mother to visit Colonel O'Brien during that period of time. There's no way I would have done that. I just mention it as a fact that they did have some contact during this period. Paragraph. There was some discussion of my uncle and Tommy Baker, who these gentlemen described as being very close friends and who liked to hang out together and in some cases fight together. They mentioned one instance of a scrap at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii, where the MPs tried to break up some altercations involving Colonel O'Brien and Tom Baker, and were not very successful. That relationship between Colonel O'Brien and Baker extended beyond the barracks, and as I hope my book will show, was reflected in their relationships during the Battle of Saipan, period. Apparently, Colonel O'Brien relied heavily on Baker to conduct reconnaissance missions and to provide important information about enemy whereabouts. And I hope to develop this in some detail in my book. Paragraph. Another gentleman who joined us at the table later that day was Mr. Charles H. Walter, who served with Company G as in God, 105th Infantry, period. He was a draftee from Long Island who joined the 105th at Fort McClellan, Alabama. He spent 3.5 years overseas with the unit. He was a very pleasant gentleman and told me a number of stories about his combat experience. We agreed to talk further about it. He gave me a list of a number of officers who served in the 3rd Battalion, 105th Infantry, including Lieutenant Colonel O'Donnell and others, which I intend to follow up with when I have the time. Tomorrow, I expect to meet with several other members of the 105th, including Mr. Arthur Herzog, who was a radio man and who saw my uncle just before he was killed, and Mr. Al Conlon, C-O-N-L-O-N, who served in the Company A, 105th, at National Guard before activation and at Fort McClellan. However, he left the 105th and became a member of the military police. I believe that summarizes my thoughts to this point. I will be talking tomorrow with these other gentlemen, and we'll be recording live their comments. This is a brief addendum of my dinner conversation on September 24. I wanted to relate comments made by Mr. Mariano about what it was like on the evening of July 6, 1944, when Colonel O'Brien received word that the 1st Battalion, 105th, was ordered to proceed approximately 250 yards forward and join up with the 2nd Battalion. Period. Colonel O'Brien had been ordered to report to regimental headquarters and to Colonel Bishop, and when he returned, he was, according to Mariano, very angry. He knew that this was a very dangerous action. That is to say, moving forward in the twilight, in almost darkness, digging in the face of what they believed was a forthcoming enemy attack. This was also supported by my telephone conversation with Frank Albanese, who said that Colonel O'Brien was very upset that evening when he returned from regimental headquarters with the information that he was to move forward with his battalion. Period. I don't want to get into personalities, but I have the feeling from what I have heard is that Colonel O'Brien was not happy with those orders from Colonel Bishop. Nevertheless, as a soldier, he followed through with them, since he knew that if he refused, that Colonel Bishop simply would have replaced him and put someone else in charge. And as we know, Colonel O'Brien at all times wanted to be with his men. End of addendum.
That's good.
Okay, Mr. Herzog, could you give me your full name and address, please?
Arthur Herzog, 509 Bryant Avenue, New Hyde Park, New York.
Now, Mr. Herzog, or can I call you Art?
You can?
When did you join the 105th Infantry?
January 27, 1941.
Okay, where was that?
That was in Fort McClellan.
At Fort McClellan.
Right.
So you had not served with the 105th prior to...
No.
Were you drafted?
I was a volunteer, and they sent me down to Fort McClellan.
Okay, and that was in January of 41.
Right.
In what organization were you assigned?
Well, they were forming up the anti-tank company, and I was billeted with I Company for a while until they found an area for us, and they set us up.
Okay, I Company is...
105th Infantry.
Right, 3rd Battalion, 105th.
That's right, yes.
Okay. Can you tell us what the anti-tank company was?
Well, the anti-tank company was, combat tanks and 37 millimeter guns. And it was a truck outfit, more or less.
How many were there in the?
There were 12 guns in the company. 12 anti-tank guns.
And these were mobile. They could move.
Mobile anywhere. They could be dragged around anywhere, more or less.
Yeah. Okay. And you served at Fort McClellan until what time? When?
Well, Fort McClellan, and then I went to auto mechanic school. I went to Fort Benning, and from Fort Benning, then the war started, and from there we moved to the West Coast, and then we went to the Hawaiian Islands.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, how did they move the anti-tank weapons to California? Was it on a train, or how did?
They trained, yes. All that stuff was trained, honestly.
Yeah.
Because at that time I was in Fort Benning, and I was going to automotive school, and I joined the company again in Camp Hahn.
Okay. Camp Hahn. Can you tell us where that was?
That was in Southern California, across from an air base called March Field.
Right.
And that's where I joined them.
What was the basic duty of the unit while it was at Camp Hahn?
Well, they were getting ready, more or less, to move out of the island, out toward the islands, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
And now, when did you make the move to the to Hawaiian Islands?
It was soon after they bombed. I think we got there, if I'm not mistaken, I think we got around there in the early part of March.
Okay.
Of 41.
42.
42, sorry.
42. Was there still evidence of the bombing where you?
Well, yes, in a sense, because we moved into Honolulu, and we walked across the pier and got onto another ship, and they moved us right out to the Big Island of Hawaii.
Okay. Yeah. What were your duties out there on the Big Island?
Well, the whole regiment, I guess, was used to defend the islands, because we were about the first ones out there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. And we were manning beach positions and clearing roads, fire paths. You know what I mean?
Was there a rumor that the division was going to go to Guadalcanal at one point?
Well, rumors were flying. They were available all the time.
Yeah.
The rumors were flying as thick as birds. We didn't know where in the world we were going to go until we went, actually.
Okay. So now just tell me a little bit about your anti-tank company. Who was the commander, if you recall, at that time?
Well, when we left the States, we had a company commander named Frank Martin, Captain Frank Martin.
Okay, and he stayed with you while you were in Hawaii?
Yes, he did, yes.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry, there was another officer there too, Reynolds, before Frank Martin.
Okay.
Captain Reynolds.
Okay.
And we, as I say, when we left the States, and we went to the Big Island, and that became our baby for a while to defend,
Mm-hmm. So, when was the first? Did you go on the Macon invasion?
No, we stood by, but I never went because they broke us down. I think the 165th went into Macon, and then with parts parts of the 105th were
The third-
making a beach in.
yeah.
3rd Battalion.
3rd Battalion, 105th.
Right.
Okay. So, and then you went with the regiment when it sailed for Hawaii. Could you for Saipan?
Yeah.
Could you tell us about that? I mean, what was it like? Did you know where you were going?
No. Offhand, we didn't know where we were headed for because they were kind of secretive about that until we were about a week out, maybe 2 weeks out.
Okay. Had you had amphibious training for
Oh,
landing?
yes. We had amphibious training. We were going through that extensively.
While you were in Hawaii?
In Hawaii, yes.
Yeah. So you knew you were going to make some kind of amphibious
Well,
assault?
somewhere along the line we were going to get
Yeah.
initiated, you know.
Right. When did you learn that it was Saipan?
Well, as I say, about 2 weeks out, they told us where we were headed for and give us the background of it. You know.
Okay.
The island was originally a German held, from what I understand, and it was deeded to Japan after World War I.
Right. And it had been heavily colonized by the Japanese.
Oh, yes,
A lot of
yes,
Japanese
yes.
citizens out here, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so when do you recall you arrived off the coast of Saipan? I'm just trying to get a time frame.
Yeah.
It was around June,
Around
middle June?
the middle of June, I would say,
Yeah.
middle of June.
44.
That's right, yeah.
And somewhere along the line you had heard about the D-Day invasion, I probably.
Yes, well, on the way to Saipan,
Yeah,
they informed us that they had started the invasion of Europe.
okay. Now, when did your outfit actually land on Saipan?
Well, my company, let's put it this way, my company was split between the regiment to give each battalion extra firepower. So our company of 12 guns joined the 4 guns of each battalion. So that gave them double up in-attack firepower.
Which battalion
I went with the 1st Battalion. I was with Colonel Bryan
of the 105th?
of the 105th Regiment.
Okay, now, can you describe what the landing was like?
Well, it was a rough deal because we made 3 attempts to land when we finally set up in our boats on the landing barges. The first beach they chased us off.
Who chased you?
Well, the beach party, because they were running for their foxholes and the Japs were coming back.
Was that the Marines up in the?
We don't know who was up on that line, but I know they waved us off and they told us get out, get away, because they were experienced fire and machine gun fire and all. You could hear it whizzing across the boat, whizzing across the barge, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So we made another swing, and this time we hung up on a reef for a while, and we didn't know whether we were going to make it or not. I mean, this landing barge had a jeep, a gun, an anti-tank gun, and about 12 men. So we were like overloaded, you know.
Yeah. When did you finally land on the beach?
Well, we landed at the 3rd attempt, and then we had to go hunt and find the rest of the company. I mean, which was scattered from here to you know where.
All right. So it was it light or dark? Was
Well, it was getting kind of dark when we landed. We finally, it was getting towards the evening.
right?
Yeah.
Did you experience any Japanese fire after you hit the beach?
Well, fire was all around, you know what I mean? It was one of these deals, you'd get fire from one end and then start from the other place. And you never could pinpoint where it was coming from.
Yeah. So then the next day, which would have been probably the 18th of June, did you move out?
Well, we moved out, they wanted to move you off the beach anyhow because you were
Backed up.
backing up and you're clogging the flow. So what happened was that they moved us up, and then we got up to an area where they could start to, get some kind of order to it.
Mm-hmm.
They moved us back to sent us back more or less to pick up the stragglers in the company.
Okay. So was your unit involved in Oswego, is that how you pronounce it? Airport?
Yeah, we were on at Oswego Field.
Oswego Field, yeah.
Yeah, we were involved in that, because I think the 165th took the field, but we were still fighting to keep the sniper fire and all the other stuff clean.
Was your unit close to or nearby where Colonel O'Brien's headquarters was?
Well, headquarters, you didn't know where it was, because it had to be mobile, had to be moving around, and it moved with the troops more or less.
Okay.
Yeah.
So can you just tell me just sort of what happened in just general terms between then and how your unit moved forward up until, say, the day before the Banzai attack? Yeah.
Well, they were moving us around different sections, and we were fighting. We were cleaning out some pillboxes, more or less. And we actually could see them. Either our guys running into these places or running out, and the Japs chasing them, and vice versa. It was a back and forth deal. And then they moved us to the position where we were supposed to land, and that was at Magician Bay.
Oh, yeah.
And that was that like a big horseshoe, and we were behind that. Had we landed there, I don't think I'd be sitting here.
Yeah, the Japs had that heavily
fortified. But machine gun nests all over, and they had it pretty well zeroed in with artillery. And
right.
They moved us in. The only reason we moved in behind the Marine, I should say our Marines, they couldn't hold that beachhead. And when we finally come in, reinforced them and moved them, and they moved us around, and we got to the back of that position.
Yeah.
And we saw what we'd have been into.
Yeah. Well, I think as I recall from reading Love's book, that the command outfoxed the Japanese. They thought that the attack would come from that side of the island, but they came around from the other side, from the west side. Right?
West side, yeah. So, and I say we were fighting along the line, cleaning out caves and sniper fire, and whatever stragglers you had.
Yeah.
Then I was in a position. I was watching where these Japanese had taken the Marines' uniforms. The Marines that were killed, and they were firing from what looked like the front. They were going to go back towards the beachhead, and they sat down. And we were watching them. I mean, we couldn't fire because we were hampered, because we didn't know who was who. We couldn't.
They were trying to infiltrate.
They were trying to get to the rear and start to
raise hell
with the beach party.
Yeah.
And
were they intercepted?
Oh, they were intercepted, yes. And I understand there was about 150 of them that they got there. It looked like a company of Marines that was relieved, And as they were coming back, this somebody goofed, and then it started the fight. Then, and that's when we seen it, but we couldn't do nothing because we were up on the hill, looking down at it. Our boys was in there.
Yeah. Was that the 105th involved in that?
105th, and it was, I think along that road it was, yes. Yeah.
What, did you ever run into any Jap tanks?
Well, that was the thing that they were worried about just before that Banzai charge. They were afraid the Japs had secretly hidden tanks along the line, and we were protecting flanks.
Mm-hmm.
And it was one of these deals where they didn't show, but they were still afraid of it,
Okay. So, can you just sort of describe generally what were the casualties like between the time after you landed and just before the Banzai attack?
Well, we were taking casualties. I mean, we were getting hit, and any time that it looked like we were the only ones, like the Marines and the Army, because you couldn't see many dead Japs, because they would pull their bodies back and put them in shallow graves. So what happened was, it was starting to have a harrowing effect on the men. Because they would say, look, we're fighting somebody, and we're leaving up. I mean, our guys are getting killed, and we're not finding any bodies. Yeah. It was a rare occasion when you've seen some.
It was a psychological ploy.
It was a psychological ploy that the Japs were pulling.
So, tell me, when you got up to the Tanapag Plain, right? That was like on July 6th.
Yes.
Okay.
Well, for some reason I wasn't taking my salt tablets, and I was dehydrated. I
Okay.
mean, that's how I come to meet
Right.
the
right.
Colonel
Now,
O'Brien.
what was it? Can you sort of remember what time? When was that? I mean, like, was it on the 6th, or was it on the morning of the 7th? Or?
It was the 6th. It was like in the afternoon of the 6th,
Okay.
and we were moving, trying to protect flanks and whatnot, you know. So what happened? I mean, I went to the aid station and I got my salt tablets plus another batch of water, because somebody had painted the cans, and with the water that we were getting, you couldn't drink.
Yeah.
And they took my water, threw it away, and they gave me a fresh batch of water along with a handful of salt tablets in it, shook it, and they told me to drink it. And that was when Colonel O'Brien come in.
And what would that have been? I'm trying to sort of fix the point of time when that would have been.
That would have been the afternoon, I think, anywhere from about 3 o'clock on.
Okay.
And he, as I say, we had moved up with them, and he come back. Now, we wasn't too far, because the lines weren't too far spread between, you know?
Yeah.
With the battalions, there wasn't too far between.
Had the Japanese begun the attack by that time?
Well, they were starting to be annoying, let's put it that way. They were starting to sporadically hit this way, or, you know, front or side. It
Yeah.
didn't mean much. Any way they could get you, they would try.
Yeah.
So fire was coming from almost every direction, every direction.
Okay. Now, was the first battalion? What I understand is that sometime late in the afternoon on the 6th, the first battalion was ordered to move up
Right, yes.
right around twilight or something.
Right, that's it, yes.
Move up a couple. What is it? 1,200 yards.
Something.
1,200 yards.
Something like that, yes.
Yeah.
Because it's, all right, I didn't mean to cut you short.
No, no, but so when you were at the aid station and you saw Colonel O'Brien,
Right, yeah.
was that after they moved forward?
They were starting to move forward, from what I understand.
Okay.
He says that, I mean, quoting the colonel, he says that the Marines didn't know where the devil they were. They were off so far. I mean, with the figures that they had given, they were supposed to have been up further than what they said. So what happened was, he was discussing that with Lieutenant Thompson, because my officer come with me.
Oh, Lieutenant Thompson.
Lieutenant Thompson and Sergeant Sid Cross.
They were from the anti-tank company.
They were from they were with my platoon.
Okay.
I, being a radio man, knew what do you call it? Knew O'Brien's radio man, but the name slips my memory now. But he had been killed that morning, and the colonel was telling me, and as I say, he was talking to me like I'm talking to you right now.
Yeah.
And he says the radio man was killed. He says we got, you know, which was a normal thing. And that's when my lieutenant asked, did he need us up there? And he says, no. He says, the way things are going, he says, we can't use you up there right now, because everything was muddled, you know.
Yeah, fluid. Yeah.
Everything was changing so rapidly that you couldn't assimilate anything that was you could call a line.
Right.
Yeah.
Now, when he came to the aid station, was he wounded, Colonel?
Yes, he was. Colonel O'Brien was wounded.
Do you remember where he was wounded?
In the legs and that. I think not a mortar shell, but a grenade. The Japs had thrown a grenade, and he was in that close, and the fragments got him, and they were going to evacuate him. And the doctor,
they being the doctor at the...
Doctor, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I'm trying to think of his name, Dr. Tishman? Dr. Tishman.
Okay. And he examined the colonel?
He examined him, and he said, we're going to have to evacuate you. He says, like hell you are.
That's what the colonel said?
That's what the colonel told him right there, as soon as I'm sitting right here.
Yeah.
And
then, what, did he say anything else after that?
After that, no. And I went back to my outfit with my officer and sergeant, and he went on his way, and that must have been, and it couldn't have been any more than a couple hours, I'd say. Now, I don't know what the time frame was between the time that he got killed and the time that I talked to him.
Yeah. Was he with anybody else, Colonel Brown?
Just the driver, just his driver.
Driver.
Yeah. His name I don't remember.
Yeah. And a Jeep, they had a Jeep.
Oh, yes.
So,
Yes, yeah.
okay, so then he left and went back up to the
Well,
lot.
He went up to the 1st Battalion, yes. Because he was complaining, more or less, to the 1st Lieutenant. He said, we're losing men, he says, because the 2nd Battalion had held their line, and he had to go fight through, they had to fight through to get to where he was supposed to be.
Yeah.
According to what they had mapped out for the drive,
Yeah. You mean when you say he had to fight through, you mean Colonel?
The 2nd Battalion.
Yeah.
Now, from what he said on the map, the readings were, he says the Marines were short. He says we had to fight through. The 2nd Battalion had to fight their way up, and they had to fight through. The 1st Battalion had to fight through to get up there. To get to that point.
So the Marines, they left Japanese.
The Japanese were all over the place then.
Yeah. The Marines had bypassed them more
or less. They were pushing them down. I understand that the way the enveloping moved was they pushed them all down into the the 2 battalions.
We were on the 2 battalions were over on the railroad line.
Right, yeah. And
what was the railroad? Some people describe it as a railroad cut. Can you just remember what that looked like?
Oh, I'm just trying to picture it again. It's been so long. But they used the cane cars, they moved them around,
right.
And it was like a cut for them. And it was the main line around the island for them. And that's all I can tell you.
And the troops were dug in.
Oh, yeah.
On either side of the.
On either side of that track, yeah.
Yeah. And what I understand is that the Japanese, when they made their big attack, some of them came down.
So there was a hollow there, a gully like. They come along that.
Yeah.
And that's why they figured they were going to trap the guys, but they didn't have to trap near. They had them trapped anyhow.
Yeah. So what happened? The next? I mean, that night, was your outfit involved in?
Well, yeah, we were involved in it because even our section. We wasn't too far behind. We were getting mortar fire. We were getting every now and then machine gun fire. Of course.
Your weapons.
Well, we were in close perimeter, so we had to watch our fire. We're sure we were firing.
Yeah. So then I guess the fighting took place all that night.
It was all that night. It was continuous.
Yeah.
It was continuous.
What was it like in the morning of the 7th
when reinforcements started to come through, it started to quiet down a little, but you could see in our perimeter we had guys killed. We lost about 4 guys in there, like medics and that. They were killed. They were killed right in amongst us.
Whereabouts was that perimeter in relation to? Well, I'm trying
yeah.
to. Was it to the front line? Were you behind the front line or?
We were behind it. We were just a little behind it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was that near battalion headquarters? 1st Battalion headquarters?
Well, as I say, the headquarters were fluid. You didn't know.
Yeah.
You didn't know where they were. Yeah. Wherever they put up and said the Colonel is, that was it.
Yeah.
And then, as I say, with the radio, we were in contact with any and everybody, and it didn't seem to matter who it was because everything was crazy.
Yeah. What? So the reinforcements came up.
Reinforcements came up, and when they relieved what was left of the 2 battalions, it looked like 2 companies walking out.
Yeah.
That's how they were cut down.
Yeah. Okay. And some of them, I understand, swim out into the.
Oh yes, some of them swam out.
Did you see that? Did you see that?
We had a couple guys that were. That one fellow from our company. I think he was from 2nd Battalion. His name was Frank Blum. He swam out to a destroyer. Frank Blum, his name is.
Swam all the way out to a destroyer.
Right. Yeah. They couldn't do nothing.
Yeah. So.
Because then another thing, they were getting ready to shell us, the destroyers, that we were going to put in naval gunfire, more or less to assist, but they were, later on, I mean, well,
They would have hit the,
they would have hit our guys.
yeah,
It was one of them things, friendly fire again, you know?
yeah,
Because the Japs were intermingled everything, and we were with them. It was
yeah.
one of them deals, and as I say, when your uncle was found, I mean, there was quite a few Japs around, and, I mean, he made a good name. He made a mark for himself anyhow, you know, he,
Yeah,
like that, don't give him an inch, as they say, that was it.
yeah. What about Baker? Did you see Baker at all when you're up there?
No, I didn't see Baker at all, no. It was one of them deals, I think, he got lost in the shuffle there, you know, because everything was in turmoil, let's put it that way,
Turmoil,
in
yeah.
turmoil.
Uh,
You did things that you wouldn't ordinarily have done, you know? Like I got up out of the foxhole and climbed up towards the road, you know, and got up towards that road. And there was somebody had a bead on me, and thankfully was shooting high, because he was pruning a tree every time I moved.
Huh.
Yeah.
So what happened after that? After we were relieved and said,
We were all relieved and pulled back into a different section. Then they started to take count, you know, what went on.
yeah,
And then we, as they say, this outfit got it, that outfit got it, and the men, as I say, it was one of them deals that you were lucky that you were breathing, you know?
mhm. So, were you then subsequently evacuated, your outfit?
Well, they pulled us back, yes, they pulled us back into another area.
Yeah, well, I mean, and were you involved in your outfit involved in the cleanup afterwards? Or?
Well, yes, we used to make sweeps after the island was, quote, secured.
Yeah,
Yeah, we were losing more men then too, because we had to go up these gullies that the Marines bypassed in some cases, and neutralize them because the Japs were living in them.
yeah,
We go up and seal them, and that was another deal. They'd come back. I mean, when we'd sealed them, they stayed sealed, but the Marines, it seemed like they went right by them.
mhm. Okay.